Welcome to another episode of the Unmeasured Podcast. And I have just the absolute most special guest with me here today, my best friend since fifth grade. And it is such a joy to have Joslyn Villapando here with us. Joss, welcome to the Unmeasured Podcast.
Thank you, Sim. And I haven't heard you say my name, Jocelyn, in many years.
I know, even Villapando. I'm
I
like,
know.
Joss Winkler, aka Joslyn Villapando.
Uh,
Oh my goodness. Well, to know you is to love you. And I know everyone here is just going to be so thrilled to hear all that you have to bring to today's conversation. For anyone who doesn't know Joslyn and her husband Matt own Woodwalk Gallery, a beloved creative venue in Door County, Wisconsin. They moved to this magical property with their two girls, Jojo and Sylvie, in 2022 from Chicago and now live in an old farmhouse next to the gallery that was previously a dairy barn. With Joslyn's background in art and art education and their mutual love for hosting and creating unique and meaningful gatherings, it brings Joslyn and Matt immense joy to be in this magical place, raising their girls in a loving, open, and supportive community. It is so, I feel this way and I tell you this all the time, but it is like one of the greatest joys to see the life that you all have created in Door County. It is just so beautiful to see how you had this dream and you followed it and you made it happen. Will you share with everyone how you first found Woodwalk and a little bit about the story? Because we have so many people in this community who have a dream on their heart, in their mind, for their life. And I just even think before we dive into the question about parenting today, that there are going to be so many people who are going to be really encouraged by how you all ended up in this magical Woodwalk experience.
yeah. So I literally feel immense gratitude every day that I wake up and get to do this life here. We got married at this venue. So Matt grew up here. And when we were looking for places to get married, Door County was very natural. I remember when he first brought me here and told me that his hometown was Door County, I was like, why are you calling your hometown by the county first? And second, what is this magical place? Like, it's just everything I could ever want in a place to live. We're by the water, we're in nature. It's a super creative and arts centric place. So we got married. I think it was the only venue we looked at because it was an art gallery. It just made so much sense. I was teaching at the time, teaching art. And I remember that after our wedding, it sold. Um, and I remember we talked and we're like, that's so crazy that it sold. Like, I wonder if we would have known that it was for sale, if we would have wanted it. And I also remember in that same moment going, I don't think so. Like, we're so happy with our life in the city and we didn't have kids yet. So we were just bopping around and enjoying that. Um, and then so then we had kids. We had Jojo 6 years ago. And I remember bringing her to Woodwalk when she was 1.5. And she's playing in the garden. She's out in front of the barn. And I'm like, oh my God, is this not like the most? It just was like one of those moments that was so clear, like, wow, this would be my dream living. And so with that thought, I think really quickly after that, I emailed the owners and I said, this is very forward of me. But if you ever go to sell, like, I promise we are the people for this place. And it was 3 years of back and forth. At one point they said, actually, their first response was, yeah, actually, we're thinking about selling in 2 years. Let's keep talking. And we met for lunch and it was like rolling. I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to happen. And then they pulled back and said, actually, 5 years. And it felt like such a dagger to the heart. Um, and then the pandemic happened. I think that shifted everything a little bit. And a couple years of back and forth, and then here we are in 2022. Summer of 2022 is when we took over. And it's everything I thought it would be. and more, to not sound too cheesy, but it's pretty dreamy.
It is so dreamy there. And I feel like you and Matt and the girls have just like taken to making that place your home and inviting people in. And it is such a beautiful way for you to use all of your skills. It's one of those moments in life where it's like, oh my gosh, it really feels like every single experience that you and Matt both independently have had made you so ideal to run this space and for this to be your life together. It's so special. It's so cool to see. And because we have known each other for so long, like I also think what's really neat is that since middle school, I mean, you had a picture of you jumping off of a dock into a lake
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
your bedroom, taped up on your closet. Was it you and Susie?
Um, Probably Amy Montgomery
Amy, yeah. Okay, you and Amy.
and
Um,
Nate.
and on this dock, and I feel like since middle school, you've been saying, I want to live by a lake. I'm gonna live by a lake. My dream's to live by a lake. Like literally for the decades that I've known you, you've shared that. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, you live by a lake and like a really good one.
A really good one.
A really good lake. Like
Oh,
you did it, you're there, and it's so it's so cool to see you raising your girls there, and I know that they're just thriving, and I admire you so much as a mom. And I always am like, I say WWJD, what would Joss do when I have like a parenting thing? And that's why I just know that you're gonna have so much amazing wisdom and insight to offer today. The question that we got for today's episode is, can you talk about navigating big feelings in your kiddos without taking it personally? And Joss, you've got so much experience both in education as an art teacher for so many years and also as a mom now for so many years, as an aunt for so many years. Like, I feel like you just have a lot of experience with kids and you're so good with them. And I just look up to you a lot. You're very inspiring for me when it comes to parenting, and you do a really beautiful job of holding space for Sylvie and Jojo's feelings. So I'm really excited to get to have this conversation with you today.
thanks, Sim. Well, same. I am so glad that, my sister and my best friend had kids before I did. I get to watch you guys as mothers. I've loved watching you as a mother. There is no one that will play with kids like Simi. Nobody that will engage and be so present in every moment. I mean, I know that when you visit my girls, they are they are just so excited. You guys are doing hair together. You are running around outside. I'm like, dang, I would not be running right now. I just want to sit and watch. So
Oh,
I love seeing that because it's so inspiring, how present you are with your kids.
I think with parenting, it's like you kind of have to, I don't know if you agree with this, but you kind of have to find your things that feel good when you do them and then like do a lot of them. I'm like always down for a game of tag, but like,
My
God forbid one of my kids wants to like throw a
God.
ball with me. I'm like, oh no.
Oh, see, I would rather throw a ball because I can stand there and not run. Um,
I'm like, not the hand-eye coordination. I've
oh
got to
my
bow
God.
out. I've got to
Oh
bow
my
out
God.
gracefully.
I do think it's really fun and helpful to figure out the things that like are a no for playing with kids, and then what the things that you really do enjoy engaging in, because I know that for me, like playing tag, running on the playground, I do not want to be like crawling on my knees on a hard plastic playground or, whatever. Um, oh, playing make believe, like pretend dolls. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is not what I want. But I will make things with you. I will do art with you. Legos are a new thing for us, and I'm obsessed. We just sit and Jojo and I take a page and go back and forth, and we have music playing, and I love that. So I do think it's like so fun to figure out those different things. And it's okay to say no to those things you don't want to do with your kids, you know?
Absolutely. It's really freeing to have permission to be the best version of whatever parent you are and to lean into those things and not to feel like you have to be like for me, I'm not going to be like making elaborate crafts with the kids because it would not go very well. But like it's okay. That doesn't make me it doesn't make me a bad mom. And I think that when we can figure out what are the things that we're gifted in, what are the things that we enjoy, and how can we lean into those things more, that it makes motherhood a lot more enjoyable.
I totally agree. And just going back to the big question, I love this question. I think it's something that none of us can ignore, becoming mothers. And you mentioned, that I was a teacher and an aunt before having kids, and I know for myself that my biggest growth moments came with kids.
Mhm.
So I had all the background, all the education of teaching, but this practice of not taking things personally for me didn't happen until I had kids, because with the birth of the girls, both girls, came this like intense and very real and genuine curiosity to do the self work. I think you can't get around it, and it's, if we view it in the right way, it is such a like, I crave knowledge. I crave learning how to show up as my highest self with my kids. So it really did come, and I'm still learning it every day. And I think this question is so good too, because I mean, we're still learning as adults how to not take things personally in every interaction with the people around us. I feel like I'm just now seeing it more and more, how to not take things personally with friendships and work situations and things like that. Um, and I'm able to take that pause and create that space. And I think this has a lot to do with the codependency tendencies, and things like that.
Yes.
Where do you find that you take things personally, like when you reflect on your parenting?
Yeah, I love how you said you crave to be your highest self with your kids. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I've never wanted to experience like such deep healing and be like the whole real version of me more than with my kids. And I also don't know if I've ever been triggered more than with my kids. So there's this almost conflict of wanting to be my best and highest self, and also feeling like things will happen that will hit at such deep down, like points of pain or old wounds that I didn't even know I was still carrying around with me, that really take me by surprise. And I think for me, the hardest thing about big feelings with my kids, and this is so my own stuff coming up, but if I am alone with my children, I feel like I can hold so much space for their big feelings. And I can say the things that I've learned, from Janet Lansbury and Dr. Becky. And I'm like, okay, yeah, like validating their feelings and, really being there for them. Where it's hard for me is when other people are around. And I am instantly that part of me that wants to feel loved and accepted by other people gets triggered like on behalf of my kids, where I start to worry, oh no, what are people thinking about them? Or what are people thinking about me? Or how are people perceiving them? Or are people judging them? Are people going to want to be around them? Are people going to be around, want to be around me? Like that is where, for me, it feels really hard to be really present and in the moment with my kids and for it not to feel personal. I wouldn't say that I ever feel like my kids' big emotions are personal in terms of how they feel about me. I mean, my kids have said things like, I hate you. Joss has heard it. She's heard it happen. And I feel like I can navigate that with like, they're having a big feeling. They don't, they don't actually think that about me. But what feels more personal is like the wound of, will I be loved and accepted? Will they be loved and accepted when other people are around? And so my experience with parenting has been that whatever is deep down inside and hasn't been fully healed, and I don't know, like as human beings, are we ever fully healed? I don't know that that's like a reality, but that's what gets triggered in me and for me with big feelings.
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense. And this feels very connected to your podcast with Shelley, which I love
Yes.
because isn't parenting just raising ourselves and working on ourselves in order to show up for our kids? Um, but I can totally see what you're saying. I think the more people that come into experiences and time that we're spending with our kids, like it makes so much sense that you feel this microscope, and all of a sudden you're not just thinking, what am I doing? Now you're thinking, what does that person think of what I'm doing? And it's I feel the same way. Like I've been noticing this a lot more now that we own a gallery, and Jojo, our 6-year-old, is often in the gallery with us, Sylvie too, but Jojo is 6, so she's pretty reserved and she's pretty anxious until she knows you. She's kind of a worrier and she's an observer. So people will come in and say like, "Hello, Jojo, like how old are you? What's whatever." And she doesn't always respond. And oh my gosh, my insides are just like, please respond. Say hi, Jojo. Um, and it's taken me, I don't do this the way that I want to every time, but when I think about her first, it helps me so much. Like, okay, how do I want her to see me respond to this person who I will say some people kind of they take that personally, they might not get a hello back from Jojo, and then they make kind of a little sarcastic comment, or you can tell that made them uncomfortable that she's not speaking to them. But when I am with my highest self, in my highest self, like embodied, I am more thinking about how I want to respond to that person in Jojo's eyes. You know what I mean?
Yes. Oh, Joss, I love that so much how you said when I think of her first and thinking about how she's going to internalize that and experience that is so beautiful. What helps you go from that first initial moment where it's like, "Oh, okay, I'm feeling like I don't know if triggered is the right word, but like I'm feeling that okay, I hope you say something or I hope you respond," that feeling to moving through that, getting to the place where you're thinking of Jojo first, you're responding in a way that you want her to see, like through her own eyes. What helps you go from like point A to point B? Because I think we probably all have our own like point A and point B. And what helps you to move like from one to the other?
So I think that it's so helpful to think about this as like lifelong learning. And, when I'm away and when I'm out of the situation and I'm by myself and I'm reflecting on things, that's when the learning is happening and the questioning myself and all of those things. But I think, like, for me, practically in those moments, I've got to find ways to really separate myself from my kids. So, and it really helps me to have an image or like a tool that is visual for me. So I think it's really important to separate and have that space. Like, you are you having these big feelings, and here I am in my own feelings, and I don't have to commingle, and we don't have to get tangled up in each other. So what really helps me is imagining, like, I think the pause is so important. That pause of like, okay, everything's okay. We are okay. And I'm going to imagine myself inside this bubble. Um, I'm not distant. I'm not engaging with you, but I'm inside my bubble. I see you, you see me, I'm here with you, but I'm not gonna like take on your big feelings. Um, and that has helped me so much. I've heard like Janet Lansbury describe putting on like a Superman or like a superhero suit and having a shield where she's like blocking these big feelings from getting to her. But for me, this like bubble image is really helpful. And I feel really strongly too that like their big feelings are theirs. And I think we all have like heard this idea that it's so unnerving when we share in their big feelings. It's so unnerving to them. And even as an adult, it's so funny. Like I go right back to being a kid, but right after Sylvie was born, my mom was in our home for I think a couple weeks, and you know, your most vulnerable self after a baby. Oh my gosh, like the emotions are right there. Um, and I can remember just like bursting into tears a lot. Not for no reason, but just like, you know, for smaller things than would normally get me bursting into tears. And my mom, bless her, is just such an empathetic person. So she would burst into tears immediately. And I remember thinking like, no, these are my feelings. This is my big feeling. You now I'm like, I don't want to have this big feeling because you're reacting to my big feeling. And so I'm really conscious of that now, of like, Jojo, Sylvie, you're having your big feelings, but those are yours. They're not mine. I'm going to go inside my bubble, you know. Um, is there something that helps you? What helps you to create that space?
Oh my gosh, Joss, I just love that image of the bubble. And I love the example that you shared with your mom too, because I I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think we share this, but when someone has a big feeling around me, then I'm like, well, now I have to take care of your big feelings. And so it's
Yeah.
like, if I'm the one, if I'm the one that was feeling whatever I'm feeling, and now you're feeling it too, now I all of a sudden am like, well, it's time for me to take care of you now, or I need to be like comforting you and your feeling. And so I'm like, wow, I wonder if, little kids feel that way too. I'm sure that they do. So that was super powerful for me to think about. Um, what helps me? Well, as someone who is sensitive to anxiety, I guess I would say I experience a lot of anxious thoughts and then feel like the residual anxiety in my body. I know that I'm experiencing anxiety because I almost feel electric. Like I feel like my skin has electricity on it. And so it's like an energy sensation in my body. And so I will really try in moments with my kids where I start to feel like the tingles. It's just like a tingly feeling. I'll try to take some deep breaths until it's almost like someone flips the light off and like turns the surge of electricity off. And so, like, just taking a couple of really deep breaths helps me because I know when I'm in that anxious energy, when I'm in like my fight or flight, freeze, fawn response, that it's really hard for me to do what you were describing and put them first and think of them first because I'm panicking. And when I'm panicking, I go into self-protective mode. And when I go into self-protective mode, it's like people pleasing and let's all say and do the right thing so that, no one's like put off. And I just want to say I have a lot of awareness that that's not helpful for my kids. And I work on it really, really hard not to project that onto them. But I think when I'm in my most like triggered state, that is how I respond. And that's like learned coping, over lots and lots of years that I actively am always working to unlearn and to do it differently, both in like adult to adult interactions, but also when my kids are there. And so for me, it's taking deep breaths until I feel like the electricity turns off. And then I'm able to really refocus and show up as the mom that I want to be and also the mom that they deserve. And I think in the work that I do with women, I'm constantly hearing stories from women about childhood experiences and how those childhood experiences have impacted the way that they see themselves or experience themselves as adults. And so I find myself reflecting a lot on how am I interacting with them and how are they going to internalize that and how's that going to like impact them in adulthood. And so like really reflecting on that in a separate moment that isn't heightened and thinking about how I want to show up with them and for them really helps. I love I did a codependency meditation. I wish I could remember who led it. I don't remember, but in a codependency meditation that I was doing, they described having like an energetic string between you and another person and just imagining yourself cutting that string. And I also find that that imagery, that visual can help me so much in those moments.
I love that so much. And I know that when I was recently talking to you about being nervous about some codependency tendencies of mine with another adult, like you shared that. And I think it's so wonderful. I love the idea of imagining like the energy going back and forth too, between our kids and us, and how that is just not necessary to have happen. And we can cut that cord with our kids and just let our energies be separate and different from each other. Um, there was something that you said, I should have written it down, that I wanted to respond to. I don't remember exactly, but I love, you know, your, I feel like this is just your way of being, of always being in self-reflection and thinking about the way you want to show up with your kids. Um, and I think that it could sound really scary to be like, oh my gosh, like we are the weather, like we create the weather. We have so much power in raising our kids, and it can be scary, but it's also such a calming thought for me to think like all I need to control is myself, and all I
Yes.
am supposed to control is myself. I am supposed to release everything else. And that is, I mean, surrender has always been my mantra. It came about when I was pregnant, and I wanted the idea of surrender to be part of my birth. And I feel like it keeps showing up in my life everywhere, but especially as a parent, because the more that I lean into the idea, the more that I know I'm not supposed to control it. And the more I give myself permission to do less and less and less, especially around big feelings. Like I am not meant to do much of anything except be that calm nervous system, so that they are borrowing that. Dr. Lisa's been talking about that with her Raising Good Humans podcast about like the borrowing of the nervous system. And I really think that is just such a nice reminder that we are only meant to focus on ourselves, and the rest just comes, and we're meant to release control.
I love that idea of borrowing of the nervous system. And I think for me, I'm like, I can think about people that when I'm with them, their energy makes me feel calm. Of course, you are one of those people for me. And it's like you really do sense the energy of the people around. And kids are so attuned to energy. It will be wild to me what they can pick up on. And so I love coming back to like I'm responsible for myself. And I also think anyone who has experienced feelings of codependency or people pleasing, it's exhausting to try and control other people. Like it's very exhausting to feel like it's your work or your responsibility or your mission or your source of safety to be in control of someone else. And so I agree. I'm like, oh, how freeing. Like I don't need to try to control anyone else. I just need to be responsible for me and showing up, to the best of my ability as the best version of me. And that includes when I make mistakes, because I will, being the version of me who like can own that and can apologize and can repair and move forward. And so I find that to be very freeing.
Yes, so freeing. And it's also very freeing to like talk to our kids about why we might have reacted in a way that we didn't want to. It Jojo and Sylvie is learning, but Jojo knows like past 8 p.m. I am not my best self. And I tell her like I really start to shut down. I'm just such an early bird. And she will tell me that now, like, Mom, I know you're an early bird. And it helps so much to tell her, like, I'm human. If I am tired, I'm really sorry. My patience wears thin. Or if I'm hungry, like all these basic needs. Um, and it's so helpful to let them know that. And then they know that it's okay that they are really tired and hungry, and they're able to maybe start to name that for themselves. Jojo will tell me like she'll get kind of snippy, snappy, and then after some questions, she's like, I'm just tired, Mom.
Yes. And how nice for them to have the words to say that and to understand, like, yeah, in a human body, when you're tired, these things happen. When you're hungry, these things happen. Like, I feel like it teaches them like such really like good foundational self-care. I know self-care is like a, whatever overused terminology, but just like caring for yourself. Like you have these needs, and when they're not like when they're not met, like we feel differently, and that's so natural.
Yeah. And I think too, um, you know, working around the idea of our self-work and sharing what we need in the moment and reflecting and doing the learning is all one thing. And then I also think like there's a lot of um, checking in on our perspectives of what's happening with kids. Um, what is our perspective of why they're having these big feelings? Because I will say for myself, there are moments when the girls are having big feelings, and there's this snap reaction inside me that's like, why button it up? This is not worth crying over. Why are you being so dramatic? Like that is my internal first instinct, like, "Arr!" And then, my highest self might say, like, let's think about this. Like, first of all, believe them. These feelings are real. They might not be feelings that I would have around, not getting the right snack, but
Right.
their brains are developing. This is totally reasonable for them. And to just like believe that feeling, like that is their feeling. It's not meant for me to make an assumption about. It's not meant for me to take away. It's theirs and I can acknowledge it. Um, and they're not being dramatic. They're not being manipulative. They are doing exactly what humans are supposed to, and they are feeling their feelings. And as they get older, they will learn how to cope and manage the big feelings. But in when they're little, just that perspective is really helpful.
Absolutely. And I think something that you just said made me think about it's probably valuable for every adult who's navigating this to say like, well, what do I do with my own big feelings? Like, how do I feel about my own big feelings? Do I have ways that I express them, or do I believe for, any number of reasons that I need to push them down, or that they're too much, or that I'm not allowed to be angry? Or do I have ways that feel helpful and healthy for me to process them? And so I'm sure the ways that we feel about our own big feelings um probably get translated to our kids. I know the example I gave at the beginning, how when I'm alone with my kids, there's all the space in the world to feel. Like, I am a big feeler. I have big emotions, and I'm very comfortable feeling them on my own. Like, I will I will have a good hour-long cry. Like, I can let it, come up. I can feel it. But sometimes I find myself pushing my feelings down and prioritizing other people's feelings ahead of mine when it comes to relationships with other people. And I'm like, wow, that for sure is reflected in how I internally feel about my kids' own big feelings. Like, I'm comfortable with them in private, but when it comes to relationships, I'm always working on, hey, like, I'm allowed to have a different opinion, or my feelings matter, or it's not always, you don't have to always like go with the flow and be a yes for whatever anyone else like thinks or wants, even if it's not what you want, or it doesn't feel, like right or good to you. And so I don't know, do you feel like your relationship with your own big feelings is like parallels like with the girls?
Yes, definitely. I think that the biggest triggers for me are in the moments when there are big feelings coming up for the girls. And like I was saying before, like my first thought is like, can't you button that up? Can't you um, just move through that? Like, there's no reason to be bursting like this, you know? Um, and I do remember a few years ago someone saying to me like, why do you think you react that way, or why does that feeling come up in you? And it's like, oh, I 100% do that. I am very like buttoned up. Like I'm comfortable feeling feelings, but I tend to I should take lessons from you and allow myself to like just cry more, but I can tend to button up. There are things to do today. I've got stuff for, and I can tend to um, suppress, button up, push away. Um, so when I see how easily the girls can burst into tears, it's like, wait, I don't get to do that. And you do.
Totally.
You just get to burst into tears. So man, what a good sign for me to try to feel things more. Um, I know that it's also like a really good time when I'm in my big feelings and when I'm feeling anger come up to stop and think about what needs I'm not meeting for myself or aren't being met, or like where am I not drawing a boundary, where am I not asking for help, because I can push, and then I shut down. And the work for me is to ask for that help, to take the breaks, to put up the boundary, to say no before I get to that point where I'm like, I am done. I am done for the day. Um,
Totally. Joss, something that you do so beautifully that is like one of the biggest encouragements for me is that I feel like when it comes to kids, your kids, my kids, when it comes to kids, that you don't, it can be a little moment and you just let it be a little moment and you don't catastrophize it. And I'm such a catastrophizer. So it can be like the littlest moment. And I'm thinking about like my kid at age 30, and I'm like, like it will just, I will go down such a rabbit hole in my mind so quickly, and that's my anxiety. And I I think one of the things that I love the most about being around you parenting both your kids, or if you know you're with mine, is just seeing how you don't make things into situations or scenarios that they don't need to be. And I am sure for a lot of parents that comes up with big feelings. It's like, oh my gosh, catastrophizing it, like making it bigger. How do you, asking for a friend, how do
Ah,
you, how do you let like little moments be little moments? Like it, how do you not catastrophize? Because that is something that I am working on in my life, parenting and elsewhere. And I am so freaking inspired by how you do that. I'm like, can you, like, should we hug and like, will some of that rub off on me?
oh gosh. Well, first of all, I feel like also it is the work. I'm like super aware that there are moments that make me want to, or I would have a tendency to just be like, oh my gosh, wait, what? Like, um, it comes up for me when I think about, I think we've talked about this too, like more about like how the kids are at school and like with their friends. So it would come up for me like, Jojo might come home and tell me a story about kindergarten, like, hey mom, Madison, oh, sorry, take that out. No name.
Okay. No, no.
No names. Jojo might come home from school and say, like, my friend whispered in my ear that this kid is stupid. And I'm like, oh my God, please tell me that you did not engage in that. Or, so my instinct,
Totally.
I could totally go down a rabbit hole of um how did you react? Like, were you kind? Are you able to stick up for yourself? Are you a follower? Like, oh my gosh, all of those things.
Yes.
But I'm not sure that I have, something that I have figured out that works for me or that is the solution exactly. But I do find that, like I say, like doing less, I don't have to do anything with that. It is a kindergarten moment, and nothing is going to change that. Nothing is going to, there's no action of mine that is going to change what happened. So all I can do is listen and ask questions, like that's it. I don't have to teach a lesson in that moment. I don't have to say, like, make sure you're kind and make sure this and do, all I need to do is give her that space to reflect and tell me more, um, and do less with it. And I do feel like humor is a huge part of, I guess, my values in parenting. I think it feels like it comes really naturally to our family, and humor is like a big part of how we diffuse things. And I'm not saying like to laugh when they're in these big feeling
Totally.
it comes very naturally to like diffuse things with humor, and it helps me so much to just think like this is not the end of the world, we are okay. it there is humor in this situation, um and it is like a um laughing does like regulate us.
Yes.
So the more that we're able to just surrender and let let it go and see the humor in moments, that does a lot for our own nervous systems, alongside our kids.
Yes, it is amazing what a good laugh can do for the way that you feel. And you do such an amazing job of connecting with your girls through humor. I feel like you really embrace the things that they think are funny. And it's so sweet. And I think that in and of itself is like an emotional regulation tactic. Not that I think you're laughing with them because you're like, this is going to help them emotionally regulate, not that, but that it really does show them like my mom can connect with me emotionally, and that they feel like safe and comfortable sharing things with you. And it's so sweet to see the way that you are, like the way that you like crack jokes with them and are so silly with them. And same with Osh. Like, I mean, he just he loves when you're here. Like anytime if Joss is coming to visit, he's like, is she gonna do that thing where she pretends to walk into the wall? I love that. Like you just have this
Oh,
amazing, like very kid, like you're so good at connecting with kids' humor. And I do think that like softens them and opens them up and it makes them feel really like seen and loved. And I know like you and I mean, Joss knows every skeleton in my closet, and none of which we'll be talking about here on this podcast, but
yeah.
yeah, it's another episode. Nobody knows everything. Like, I mean, Joss literally knows every single thing about me, like every single experience. And I will say that like all of the things that we've gone through together and like individually, I think humor has been such a source of like connection for us in our friendship. And like we've always been able to laugh about stuff, even in some of like the hardest, most painful moments in, whether it's like middle school girl drama or like I think about like my dad passing away, like all of these things. And I just can remember us like finding things to laugh about. And I know for me, like that's a big way that I that we connect, that I live to connect with people in relationships. And I think just remembering when we're talking about feelings and our kids, it's like, oh my gosh, you can connect with them through laughter and through that humor. And that's really powerful.
I think so too. I I grew up in a very loving home, but it was not a light-hearted home all the time. And I'm so sensitive to tension. I'm so sensitive to when a room feels like it has this heaviness to it. And so humor is super intentional for me. It comes really naturally with kids. Like, I don't know what it is. I mean, I think kid humor is my humor, so I'm not trying all that hard. Um, and I mean, I feel so at ease with kids. Like, speak to a room of adults and I'm sweating from my armpits and like feeling so small, but put me in front of kids and I'm very comfortable. Um, so humor with kids, it feels good. It comes naturally for the most part, but it's also really intentional on my part to raise the girls in a home that feels pretty light. It doesn't mean we don't have big, hard conversations and that sort of thing, but generally, like that's how we connect with each other. And Jojo and I have these little inside jokes now that just feel so fun, and just the way that we can make each other laugh. Oh my goodness, it's good stuff.
An inside joke with a kid, like with your kid, is one of the most like special, underrated joys in life. I love that Osh is old enough now where we can have like inside jokes. And I find that it really does help to diffuse even like moments of tension between us because I am, well, my mom would say I'm very hard-headed. And I think that I've passed that along to both of my kids. And so sometimes we can get into um a bit of like a lock where we're like, who's gonna give? Which one of us is gonna give? And I find that a little inside joke can go a long way there for diffusing it and just being like, it's not you against me, me against you. We're here together. We're on the same team. And it is so sweet to get to connect in that way.
Yeah, and talk about like diffusing and um oh my gosh, my brain just like left my body. Um
Motherhood.
it happens so
And if that
often.
isn't motherhood, I don't know what it is.
I am so grateful for that because, oh my gosh, my brain is a different beast these days. Things
Yes,
leave it. And I have a couple friends with newborns, and I'm like, I have no idea what I did with the newborn. It has left my brain. Like,
totally.
I don't remember.
Well, you just have to be so in the moment with kids. It's like at every phase, there's so much to learn and so much to take in and so much to be present with that it's almost like there isn't the full capacity to like hang on to all of what happened like in the phase before or the phase before that.
Yes,
It's so
none.
wild. Um, Joss, thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful conversation. And like I said, you're just such an inspiration to me in the way that you parent, the way that you mother, the way that you are so intentional about raising these amazing girls, Jojo and Sylvie. And I can't wait for the community to get to join us for this conversation.
Oh, I'm really excited. Thanks for making me part of this conversation. When we talked months ago about the question, I made a Google Doc, and it is 4 pages of all of these things that I've been thinking about. So I hope that I've been thinking a lot about I assume, mother that wrote this question,
Yes.
thinking a lot about her. And so I really hope this helps the person that sent you this question.
Absolutely. I know that it's going to. And with the mother who wrote in this question, I think as as moms, we need to feel like we're not alone in these moments, in these feelings. And so getting to like chat through these things and just say like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not the only one who feels triggered sometimes, or I'm not the only one that gets like really short with my kids when I'm tired, or I'm not the only one that is trying to do my own work to catch up to the place that I'm supposed to be at like with my kiddo." All of those feelings that come up for us, it's so nice to know like none of us are alone. We're all in this together, and there's just so much power to having these honest conversations. So I love you and I appreciate you, and I know that whoever this mom is going to get so much from this talk.
Yes, thank you for everything, Sim. You're the best, and your podcast is just gold. It's
Love
just
you.
so lovely. I love you.